This is the second episode of getting the manifold off for the 87 Turbo Esprit. Now you see the manifold is gone. Yes, sorry we could not film taking the actual nuts off and getting the manifold off. That it was difficult to get in there, and there was no spare hand to hold a camera and no angle to get a camera set up while we were in there. It took two of us to get the last of the nuts off. You'll see a couple of the holes where the studs were. Yes, the studs do wind out also, so I'll go into that shortly. We also found is that to get access up through here and a little bit on the top, you can raise and lower the engine with one person and the other person working through here. That does work. And with the screw jack, you can bring the engine up and down. You see I have, right now it's a little high because it has a 2x4 and a block, but you can lower it down and you get a lot of movement on this side, which helps depending on how you want to turn a wrench from the top. It's the top, not the bottom. The bottoms aren't that bad. They're no fun, but you can get your hand up in between with the mount, engine mount off. What we did find is that the engine mount that's here, move around a little bit, right here. The engine mount is supposed to be here. It's missing a whole bunch of the shields. The heat shield is supposed to be on there. It's supposed to be a heat shield that protects the air pump, and there are 5 heat shields here total. 5 pieces that assemble into one unit. We had one of them out of the 5. I have ordered 3 replacements. I'll show you that on the bench here shortly, and there's one more I still have to get, and one that they don't make right now. So there's how that worked. I've been cleaning things up, cleaning up the area so we can get back. And if anyone asks, yes, this little piece right here, that's a cork with a screw and a washer on it. I had to stop the oil from coming out of the pan, and I didn't want the cork to go all the way in and then get into the pan and have worse issues. So that's how I took care of that. The way we did this is one person worked from up in this angle, which could reach around the chassis bars, and the other person on the bottom, and together the two of us got the last problem nuts off the top, and that's how we got to it. It's not easy to get to, but it managed to get done, and I thank Martin for coming over and helping. This is the manifold that came off. So if we come over, let's see how well this picks it up. There's a lot of corrosion, lots of corrosion. I was cleaning the surface off, and that's why we had a leak. The corrosion was bad enough that the gasket could not hold any longer. So that's why that happened. Also, problems that I was having was on, we'll say, on this end, this is no longer level and true. Well, not level, but straight and true, we'll say, so that mating surface doesn't work. The other part the adapter goes on that is not true either, so both of those things have to be milled if we want to use this. But we'll say, fortunately, I have a spare manifold, and these surfaces are in pretty good shape. I still will clean them up. I'll put a straight edge across them yet and check them for true. And I gotta put a straight edge across that connection for the adapter, and then we'll see if it's in good shape. Otherwise, they'll both go out and get milled. Getting to the top nuts, the hardest ones are these two. This one is still no fun to get to, but you're trying to wrap your hand around the front and get to it. It's fun. What I did make up is this. It is basically a short wrench on a stick. And what it was, let's see if I can do this one-handed here. I was doing it one-handed in the car, but you basically can get it on there, and then move the stick to turn the nut. So this is how, it's a slow process, but this is how we did the top 3 here in order to back them off the rest of the way. And it worked, because we could, from the wheel well, reach up and work each one. And I did have a metal bar, which I tried to tap and get them to break, but that didn't work. So, other tools we used. We did try standard 11 millimeter crow's foot, but of course it was a little big on the side, so we ground down the sides, but it was still too loose on the nut, especially when the nut started rounding off. Sorry if it's out of focus. So what we ended up doing is we took a 10 millimeter and we started opening the center up so that it had to be tapped on. We actually had to physically tap it on the nut, and then we're able to turn it. So we made a custom tight fit and sacrificed a 10 millimeter to get on the nut to make it work. But that's how we ended up getting this top one, which would be, let's see, this was the worst one to get for us to get to, but that's how we got that one loose. Other tools we custom made in order to make this happen is I welded this and thinned that down to get in there. You'll find that these 3, we made them pretty thin. One is thinner than the rest to get in up and over and try to get it to break the nut loose, which, yeah, they worked, but you can't turn them long because they jam if the nut comes too far out. So a bent one is always good. A offset open end is good too. That pretty much is the majority. We did have, there's another one here where we ground down the sides so that it could get in closer. That is the majority of what we ended up using besides the crow's foot to get this done. Engine mount. On the left is the old engine mount. On the right is a new engine mount. So, see if you can see the difference in the heights. The left, the original one, has collapsed, and the right one is we'll say new. So there's a large difference between, we'll say, the heights of the 2 of them. Sorry, I'll try it this way. You can see the old one had collapsed, so that was definitely time to change it anyway. So we'll say this is all about the nuts. But before we get into that, these are the studs that came out. You'll see that some of them got about to the end, and they started loosening, and the whole stud came out. I do have some new ones if any of these threads are messed up that I will put in. Not cheap, but necessary. Okay, 8 millimeter studs. This is a normal nut for an 8 millimeter, and it takes a 13 millimeter wrench. A nut that is sent to me, it's an exhaust nut by a Lotus supplier. It is 12 millimeter wrench, and you can say that it's a little smaller, which is nice. This is what was on the car, done by the last people who did this for me. It takes an 11 millimeter wrench. This is what I found. It takes a 10 millimeter wrench, and it does have a flange. I'll try to get a little better close-up of those. So when you're dealing in confined locations, to be able to turn these, this is much easier to work with in a confined location than that. And even so, this is going to be much easier than that. Even the 11 was nice, but it still was difficult to get in there. So that is, I'll say, all about the nuts. So these exhaust nuts are what I'm going to use back. They are 14 millimeter on the flange, which is about the same diameter as the actual nut here. So that shouldn't be the issue, but these I think are about 16 to 17 millimeters in diameter at the bottom, which they were very difficult. They barely fit, we'll say that. More or less along the signs of even almost a little bigger than a normal nut. But we're not going to use those. We're going to use these. I think they're going to work best. Of course, time will tell. Heat shields. On top here, you can see the one that was crumpled from previous mechanics working on the car. That is meant to, that is meant to, this engine mount sits about there on it. Give you so there's the new one. There are the other two that I have. The way this works, sorry for that, but this goes in the car about like there. This one should mount about here, a little lower, we'll say lower, and then change hands. Then this one is meant to be this way. This one protects the air pump from heat. And then there's one more small one that I have yet to get. But these three can go in the car. And I wonder how many people actually still have all theirs after years, and how many have ended up being taken off and not put back by my other mechanics. That hole goes into that threaded nut, and that's how they go together. So, and the last one, I believe, basically, let's say if this one is here, it goes right in here to protect the rest of the mount. So that's what's available right now. They've been reproduced, and they look pretty good. Now, strangely enough, it says in the parts book that these are only for the 87. So did they not put them on the 86, or did they have problems with just the 80? They had problems that they had to change for the 87. So, but those are heat shields.